YouTube, Niner Empire, what is going down? Welcome back to another video. So, the 49ers could potentially be looking to add to the wide receiver group going into 2025. Obviously, we know the whole debacle with Deebo Samuel and him struggling last year. And then, in another regard, you have Brandon Ayuk, who tore his ACL and is likely not going to be ready to play until well into the season next year. The 49ers have already been linked to T. Higgins if T. Higgins and the Cincinnati Bengals end up parting ways. But Jeremy Fowler of ESPN is reporting that Davante Adams could be interested in joining the 49ers amongst some other teams if the Jets end up releasing him before the start of the 2025 season. So what Jeremy Fowler said was the Jets must address the future of wide receiver Davante Adams, whose $38.3 million cap hit is untenable. He went on to say, a source told me Davante Adams is very intrigued by a return to the West Coast and would be open to potentially joining teams such as the Rams, Chargers, or the 49ers if he gets released. Davante Adams grew up in Northern California, so he is from there. He obviously was traded from the Green Bay Packers to the Las Vegas Raiders following that, and then obviously was then traded from the Raiders to the Jets. But he did play college football and at Fresno with Derek Carr, actually. So Davante Adams is going to be 32 years old when the season begins. However, he is still a dangerous target, especially when he has a quarterback who can get him the ball. And last season, he surpassed 1,000 yards despite playing for two very bad teams with the Raiders and the Jets. He gained over 1,000 receiving yards for his fifth straight year. He's had 6,000-yard seasons in the past 7 years. And in the one season he failed to gain 1,000 receiving yards, he only played 12 games, and that was in 2019, and he was only 3 yards shy of 1,000 receiving yards. So obviously, I mean, the 49ers will, without a doubt, kick the tires on what it will take to sign Davante Adams if he is cut by the Jets. Whether or not they want to work out a deal, there are multiple 49ers players, including Diamador Lenore, that would clearly welcome Davante Adams to San Francisco to play with the Niners. So I think the biggest thing is the price tag, right? Like the 49ers, I'm not very high on the Niners signing Davante Adams because I think, number one, he's going to come at a steep cost, and he's 32 years old, and it just makes the 49ers older. I would prefer them to sign a guy like T. Higgins, who they will likely actually pay pretty big money for, but he's still very young. I don't even know if he's really in his prime yet. I think he's probably just starting to be in his prime of his career. So I would prefer the Niners personally to pursue a guy like T. Higgins. I think it just makes more sense for the future. And not only that, but I think T. Higgins can come in and immediately be a dominant wide receiver one with the 49ers. And again, I mean, the Niners are going to probably sign a receiver in free agency, I would like to think. I mean, especially knowing that Brandon Ayuk may not be back for a few weeks after Thanksgiving this year, which is alarming because obviously the knee injury that he suffered against the Chiefs in the regular season is it's a really severe knee injury. He tore multiple ligaments in his knee, and it's definitely concerning for Brandon Ayuk's future with the team. Even though he just signed this massive contract, Brandon Ayuk, there's a chance that Brandon Ayuk may never be the same player again, and I hope to God that doesn't happen. But I mean, just being realistic, like the knee injury that he suffered is very severe. So again, I mean, with Ayuk, likely not going to be able to play until very late in the season, the Niners are going to probably sign somebody. My first choice would be T. Higgins. I think you got to go after T. Higgins before you look at anybody else. But Davante Adams could very well be a second option for the Niners to pursue if T. Higgins, one, goes elsewhere or returns to Cincinnati. So I'm definitely open to Davante Adams coming to the Niners. I just don't know what his asking price will be. And I think that, even though he is older, he's still a guy that would help this 49ers offense. But here's another thing, too. Like, you got a guy like Juwan Jennings who had an excellent year. He's more of a downfield threat type of player, a player that can get you, 15 to 20 yards on a catch. That's kind of what Davante Adams is. So they basically have their Davante Adams and Juwan Jennings. Obviously, Davante Adams is a first-ballot Hall of Famer, and I get all of that. But I think the biggest thing is like, do you want to have, like, you got Ricky Pearsall, who's a great route runner, has great hands. You got Deebo Samuel, who's very good with the ball in his hands. And then you have Juwan Jennings, who's more of like a downfield threat. So you have kind of a little bit of everything already with the receiving group currently. And I think Davante Adams and Juwan Jennings are very similar in terms of their play styles. Obviously, you also have Jacob Cowing, who's a speedster. Niners just don't get him onto the field. I think he's really kind of the odd guy out in this. But again, and then you got Ricky Pearsall. Ricky Pearsall flashed in his final 2 games, and I definitely think with him being a first-round draft pick, the 49ers clearly see a role for him going into 2025, especially with Brandon Ayuk, having that knee injury and knowing that he's likely not going to be able to play until pretty late in the year. But either way, I think they need to look at all options. You have to bring in a receiver, preferably in free agency, because this 2025 draft class of wide receivers is not that good. It's not deep. There's not very many guys in this draft that are, very elite guys coming out of the draft and into the NFL. Like this receiver draft, really just this draft for wide receivers, it's not very good. This is a defensive line draft. It's an offensive line draft. So there's not a lot of good receivers coming out in the draft, which could be a reason as to why the 49ers might look into free agency in terms of signing a wide receiver. So, again, my first choice would be T. Higgins. I would definitely be open to welcoming Davante Adams to the Niners, though. He's a first-ballot Hall of Famer. He's a dominant wide receiver. He would still be a wide receiver 1 on the 49ers. My only problem is with Davante Adams is he has complained in the past in terms of getting targets. And I don't know how many targets he would get on the 49ers because they are a run-heavy team. They've got guys like George Kittle and Pearsall and Juwan Jennings and Deebo Samuel that would probably cut into some of his target share. So I don't know if he would be willing to come to a pretty loaded offense like the 49ers when he could go to a team like the Rams, who are likely going to be trading Cooper Kupp. If he goes to the Rams, his target share is going to be through the roof with him and Puka Nacua. If he goes to the Chargers, he's immediately their wide receiver 1 because Ladd McConkey is like their number 1 guy. They also have Quentin Johnston, but he's not that good. So I think Davante Adams would probably likely rather go to one of those teams. However, I think it's definitely worth noting that the 49ers would at least kick the tires on it and see what his price tag is. I think in the grand scheme of things, he would probably have a better chance to win a Super Bowl next year on the 49ers than he would on the Chargers or the Rams. But you never know. I definitely think this is a situation where Davante Adams is towards the end of his career. He's going to want to go to a contending team, but he's probably also going to want to go to a contending team where he can get targets. And I think the Chargers are a really good team for that. I just don't know if Davante Adams is going to be happy with what his target share would be on the 49ers because I don't think the 49ers would force feed him the ball like the Jets did or he had in Green Bay. The Raiders tried to force feed him, but they didn't have a quarterback that could really throw him a good ball. So I don't know. Again, it's intriguing to talk about. I mean, I definitely think the 49ers are a suitor in the Davante Adams sweepstakes, but, again, at the end of the day, this is just a rumor. And, again, I mean, the 49ers, like probably 31 other NFL teams, would kick the tires on what it would take to sign Davante Adams, and it would be a good fit. So we will see what happens. Obviously, let me know what you guys think of this report, though. Again, Jeremy Fowler reported that the 49ers could be among suitors for Davante Adams if he is released by the Jets, which probably is more likely than not. Because, again, I mean, he's got a $38.3 million cap hit, and that's just not – like, there's no way the Jets are going to – they're either going to restructure his contract and keep him, or they're going to release him. And I think as the offseason inches closer, it's probably more likely than not he gets cut. And in that case, he would have multiple suitors, and the 49ers would be one. So let me know what you guys think of this in the comments down below. As always, go Niners. I'll see you guys in the next one.